And that's badly intentioned. But there was an article of Thomas that said why architects only live in old towns and why do they not go to the actual cities that were built by them? But the reality is that the product of the plan is usually worse than what was actually planned. The basic and what's would be dignity. We all have the we're all able to habitat, but that implies having housing, a public space, create the necessities that so we all have um, education, culture, health, places of that are public and to foster community. There are a lot of articles in the Constitution that tell us that that is the bare minimum. Everyone has the bare minimum. There's a minimum for everything in this country. I don't think that's the correct way of the things which should have. Yes, the social housing, everyone should have the basic need and cooperate. I'd just like to add before I pass the microphone to Sarah, and I understood how where we wanted to get. This reminded me a bit of how the law of the basics is directed. And I remember Elena Rosetta said that the word habitat was what actually dominated, also has a connotation that is a bit negative. So, see living as an habitat connected to the city and natural spaces. It's the path that we want to go on. Regarding the minimum, it's something that, as time went on, I talked about the existence minimum, which originated in the Middle Europe, giving a negative meaning to a certain concept that will guarantee a certain amount of things. When existence menu surged, it came with the first standards when it came to housing. And it brought on the way of finding specifics that we could actually follow. And what the minimum allowed us was that they would have the minimum area that they could get, and they would be able to live dignifiedly. And understanding the bare minimum as the little bits, we should see it as the essentials that each person has should be able to get. So less is more is usually what I say, but here it's less is enough. We have to guarantee that that nuclear part, but then we should be able to expand from there. How can the our country change? Portugal is a very essentialist country, and so the citizen just waits around for the government to do something instead of them doing it. So you could just go and pick and choose instead of actually going out and looking for it. So it makes the creating of architecture become very different because people do not see it as important as it should. We have to take it in the financial, the organization part, and no one is giving a solution, so I'll do it. And we're starting to see that a bit. What we also need is us giving spaces for us to do this and not wait for the public to do it. We need to go for it and do it. The private part will always be speculating. It's something, a kind of a fight that's different. But groups that wish to change things should be allowed. So municipalities, the state should be able to actually have the lobby put in place, but do more than that. So the bank was going left and right, and were not able to go because they had to talk with the municipality, talk about plans. And we need to understand what you guys want, collaborative, public. And so we need to work on this idea of collaboration and that each part will do their own part. So the private does their part, the collaborative part does their part, and the private part does their part in favor of rules, even if it doesn't mean following the rule. Panels exist for us to think and to actually have a rule put in place, but it also guarantees the possibility of having an habitat. I think we live in a time where it's very exciting and very sad in the other hand. And since we have a lot of tension, that forces us to go out and get out of our little bubble. Also, the legislation has been accompanying the flexibility of the plans. This is very important because what we need in reality is people like Sarah, which create and look forward to knowing things and explain how to do it and find initiatives and research teams that will allow us to get further. So, what do I need to be able to get through this and get further? Do we need to create more? Maybe there's an article that allows this flexibility of what people think. But there is, in fact, a lack of communication. There's a lack of communication that does not allow people to see the potential. Planning is something, but in there's multiple plannings, such as the execution, certain things that does not allow us to go through completely, and you should work on the plans with collaboration. And that's all that we've been doing in the short 3 years that we've been working. I'd like to say that it's needed a lot of collective intelligence, that in fact people talk and collaborate. And how do we do this? The channels. That's something with the help of idle spaces. We were able to have this more frank conversation that could have been another time.
I was very convinced about your cooperative housing projects. And what you said with your two projects, when we combine it, and when we combine it with what Lavnit said about problems and taking the positive part, it is possible to make positive projects in a new direction, at least. No? It is not impossible. It's not mere utopia. You can make it. Which are the major obstacles hindering that more of these projects are made? Successful projects, new horizons, change, flexibility, all what we address today. It was a question.
And I will give more simple answers. I would say that the most specific things that are making it more difficult is a lack that can have a lot of reasons, but it's a lack of the knowledge that people have between all the actors and sectors in housing that they intervene, because each one tends to look at things and they just protect their own rights till the limit, like we just saw that there are certain examples that were successful. And so I think there's people and actors that are political and private entities, and there are actors in the architectural part too that are very interested in looking for other options and other alternatives. And we just need to give ourselves out to present ourselves and appear in a way to learn. If you guys don't want it, it's fine. If you want it, it's fine too. If we can actually make people be conscious about this, they will learn that there are other options and there are other alternatives. And it's not necessarily wrong to do things in a way. I'm not in sync when you talked about the soil part or the terrain. I think you know that yesterday we talked about acupuncture, and so we talked about the acupuncture in a spatial manner. And there's a lot of way to make uh, prioritize different terrains, and there's a lot of ways to create new energy. We don't have to say that this territory, just because this person has less quality of life, they have to come into the center. We could create microsites where people can actually have community and they can actually live. It's not just the housing, it's about your habitat. We can focus on the immediate. We need to give options and the basic needs that people need. If it's not here, it's going to be there, but they still get access. Are still able to have community. They still have the same equipment. And now trying to answer your question, Iris, I'm not gonna start in a long. Uh, the most important reason is the people that are doing the people produce, the people who are in treating the economical area. I think it's the fault of everyone that's involved, all the sectors that are not able to work together. That's just my opinion. Taking what you were saying, I think in the end, the problems, there were two levels. There's the plan with a group, and I think the biggest problem it's the financial area. So there's need for money to go on with the project, and that's the first blocking point. And the second one, I would say it's a certain speed, as an inertia that does, if it doesn't exist in the beginning, having a community based area, we would not be able, and that would what would come with challenges. So that's the level that is more superficial. And there's a second level that has also to be worked on, which is making people conscious, even on the plan level, in a question of the property, especially the property of the place. This is a something of intergenerational. We have to understand the terrain as something for common. there's a legacy that we can go back and take and understand the terrain as something that's ours, something that's common to all of us. And that's a first step for us to be able to fight against the way that housing is being taken.
Because in a positive sense, it is a very old discussion as regards habitat and better way of life, and the habitat as a better way of life. It's a question about private property. It starts with Plato. And we have this in continuously ongoing. No? We have private property, and first of all, private property is ground. Are there any realistic possibilities today to make changes, also political changes in the legal frameworks as regards ground as a private property?
To see the legal form that may be adapt to create community land trust, because we can say, okay, this ground, this plot is public, so it is in principle common good, etc. But if the people that are ruling changes, suddenly they can decide to sell this plot, so it's no longer public land. In a community land trust, you guarantee this perpetuate, how do you say, perpetuity, perpetual common goodness. Let's say, I don't know how to say. Ai, estou a falar inglês. Pois, yeah, I can. Sorry.
Another question in this direction, very short, very short. No? It's an important topic, and therefore I'm so insisting. No? Hugo knows me. You know. I can be horrible at this. Thank you, thank you. No, seriously, are there possibilities of a combination of private investment, common ground, and new ways of combination? More flexible ways, so that we really proceed with new ways of housing in the end, for new needs. I want to make it happen, and therefore I'm asking in this direction. It's a pragmatic point from me.
Eu acho que já existe
I think there's already
através de parcerias públicas
some
em que o terreno
cooperation where the terrain is public and the investment is private.
Ai, que sim. Pois, por exemplo. Portanto, existe, já é.
Só uma questão, mas
Just a question,
solução
would that be a solution
uma hipótese de
or would
solução,
that just be an hypothesis?
encontrar uma solução genérica para
Are we able to find a generic option?
mas considerarmos os terrenos como
But
terrenos
can we consider those
sendo
terrains as
muitos
public,
terrenos, sabemos que os terrenos são
even though
privados,
we know that most terrains are private
e pensar
and
na
there's
necessidade,
not another solution?
o próprio desenho da
But can
habitação,
we find a way where we take the drawing
da arquitetura também tem que
and the
entrar
architectural
no
part
sistema, não ser o terreno
to
em si.
become a system and not just a terrain? And even though that's very important with the investment, but it's not the only conditional. And so the terrain would be the point zero,
No início. O terreno é sequência
and the
do
terrain would be the consequence.
desse manifestação.
And the interest,
A arquitetura constrói ideias. As ideias têm
the
que aparecer antes
architecture
de aparecer a iniciativa.
make ideas,
Aquela noção dos ocupas.
and the notion of occupying a space and apparently is not even using it. Many times trained are in expectable ways.
De facto, isso não é, pode não ser o interesse de todos.
And many times that might not be the interest of everybody.
Aquilo é concurso público em que a
When I talked about Leonard, it was a public thing.
possam avançar com uma proposta.
But I wanted to have privates be able to join in on,
E o remanescente ser projeto imobiliário.
and so it could become a
75 apartamentos de habitação base
mobile thing.
para fazer 25 de mercado.
And so we would want to make 25 in the
Os
market.
princípios do mercado pagaram toda a operação.
And so the
Se
people in the
o
market
tivesse que
paid
justificar
all the
aquilo,
operation. But if the municipality had to intervene, it would have been way more than what
não
we
é uma-
originally
não é
did.
esta a solução. Portanto, o que nós
So that's not the
discutimos,
solution.
aquilo que dizia a colega,
And what our colleague
a
said
operação é
in
estar
regards
disponível e
to
aberto para que tudo se possa pôr em cima da mesa
was for us to be able to take everything and put everything on a table and talk about it.
Nessa perspectiva, nós
And
temos
in
que ter
that
a humildade
perspective, we have to
de
be
perceber que
humble
nós aprendemos.
and know that everything that we learn is that the next person will be different. And I like to think with my feet on the ground.
É ir ao lugar, mas mais que estar eu no lugar,
But more than me being in the place
sabe muito mais do que eu no-
is thinking of the people that are already in that place because they know way more and being
As pessoas dão opinião sobre
and
aquilo
understanding what people think they need and what they consider important.
maravilhosa. Toda a gente dava opiniões. Nós tínhamos
And we had an amazing experience where everyone gave their opinions.
A pessoa também tem que ter a
And
humildade,
we also need to be
a
humble
inteligência de saber
and have the intelligence to be able to understand those people.
exatamente tal e qual como são redigidas, não é? Pronto, eu acho que se todas
Because I
as
think
entidades,
that if every single entity that's public,
técnicos,
all the technical people, the residents, even if we can, could make a better city.
Não sei se há mais
I don't know if there's any other question
tenho-
to debate, a sector that hasn't been talked about. Professor Antonio talked a bit about it.
20 e muitos por cento do Estado.
He talked about the 20% of the state, but there's a sector that wasn't talked
Mais
about,
100% é a banca.
which is the bank.
A banca, neste caso, de que forma é que
And in what way does the bank
o também causador desta
is able to cause these kind of challenges?
mais pessoas a vir procurar-nos?
And we haven't gotten here just because there are people more looking more for us,
Porque antes, ou seja, no pré-pandemia,
but also because pre-pandemic,
praticamente toda a população, toda a gente podia ter casa.
everyone was boring and we thought that everyone was able to have property.
É preciso uma mudança social e uma mudança de
So that
pensamento.
means that we have to have a difference in the way we take things.
Social. Que as pessoas queiram habitação social.
We need people to want public and social housing
Criou-se estigma.
because that it was started being taken as negative because the bank allowed it and now is getting a lot of money. I don't want to know your opinion on that on that thing.
I think, já ia falar. Posso, muito rapidamente?
May I
Eu
very
acho que não
quickly?
existe a solução.
I don't think there's a
Existem várias
solution. There's
soluções.
a lot of solutions, and it's important for us to bring up
Aquele
all the
sistema
options.
inicial em que não vai
And
ser o setor
going back
público
to my
que
first
vai ser o
scheme,
setor privado.
it's not the public or
Mas,
private sector that will fix
como
everything, but with other organizations,
criar
there
mais
is a possibility for us to be able to
criar
make
mais
more
oferta e oferta
options,
tal
and so the
forma
offer will go up, and
digo
that will
regular,
help in a way
controlar
regulate
a
and control
situação.
the current
Relativamente
situation.
a
Relatively to the bank,
que é, pronto, terreno e banco,
I
esses
think
são os grandes
it
maiorais.
is the people
Problemas.
at the top.
Se retiramos o terreno da equação,
But
a
if we
banca não
take
vai precisar.
the train
Se
out, the
fizermos
bank
uma
will not have
cooperativa,
as much.
não existem lucros de
If we do a collective,
existe o
there
custo
will
total,
not have
existe
that added.
valor mais baixo em termos de
And
empréstimo,
so that means that there's a lower amount
não
when
atende
sending the first,
e existem bancas éticas,
and there's
existem
ethical banks
modos de financiamento
that
que
allow
não
for correct financial and do not cause as many
do
burden.
mesmo modo como uma banca como os conhecemos trabalha, não é? Portanto, quando é isso que estás a dizer, alguém acha que
So
consegue comprar casa,
So when
mas
someone
não
thinks that
vai
they can
ser
buy a
logo casa,
house,
não
they will
ninguém
never
vai
be able to
como
actually
a
get the
Sara
house.
diz e a Helena Roseta também. Portanto, há a ilusão de propriedade.
So there's an illusion.
De certa medida, a banca.
So
Ou seja, isso
in a way,
isso
they will
há leis que
kind
andam
of insult the
para lá
bank.
que estão instituídos e que estas novas formas
So there are new
lidar
ways
vão colocar em causa.
that will be put
Há
into
problema neste
the
momento,
problem.
foi aquilo que
There's
eu
a
disse. O
problem
problema
that's
para avançar com este tipo de projetos é
currently going
precisamente
on
a banca.
is the
Porque eles
bank,
querem ter aquelas garantias
because they want to
quando
have the
vem uma
guarantee,
cooperativa de
and when
habitação e quer
there's
viver e
a
a construir de um
cooperative
modo
and
diferente,
wants to build
eles recuam.
differently,
Há muitos
they will go
bancos
back.
na Europa, eu agora vou
There's a
dar o
lot of
exemplo
banks in
da
Europe,
Holanda.
such as
Por exemplo, as primeiras cooperativas
this
a serem
first
construídas na
cooperative
Catalunha,
that were
nomeadamente
built in
Laborda,
Catalonia,
foi
like
pedir
La
um
Borda,
empréstimo a uma banca
had to
italiana.
buy
Ainda não
from
existia na
a
Catalunha. Depois
ethical bank
foi criada
from
uma na
Italy.
Catalunha e agora é essa que está a
And
financiar
then there's one in Catalonia, which is the one that's
as
actually
supercooperativas, que foi assim
doing
um
it now.
boom gigante. Mesma história na Holanda. Portanto, estamos um
Same
bocadinho
thing
por aí. A
in
Holanda é um país mais
Poland.
evoluído e já está mais à frente com isto. Eles também estão a lutar com estas questões.
They're
Estão
also
a ir
fighting
buscar
against these kind of things. They're
financiamento a bancos
trying to go find
verdes, não é? Os chamados
other
bancos
banks
verdes, que
so
são
they'll be able
outros
to
também.
get the
Também
borrowing
existem bancos
costs.
verdes que dão prioridade ou dão financiamento a projetos considerados mais
And so
sustentáveis
these
e mais
banks, they
socialmente interessantes.
they help
Portanto, também
with
têm esses
greener
critérios.
projects.
Uma vez, criar
So again,
variedade
this is
na oferta
creating
da banca,
variety when it
sempre
comes to the bank
ao monopólio da banca comercial.
and running away from the monopoly. in relation to that, we need to understand the house is seen as something that we occupy and not something that we own. We have the examples of co-living, which we can see, for example, in Porto, done by different promoters. And they show us the example of living in community where I can be 2 months here, 3 months there, where you can live in German, then you can go to Singapore. With the same card, you enter and you have access to everything that you need, and you'd pay for the services. But that's for someone who's very rich, and because we're paying for a certain service that's very commercial.
Que tendem ao lucro, etc. É um modelo válido, mas tem que se depois ter cuidado quando falamos.
But we also have to have a lot of caution.
Agora tem que vir os sociólogos todos falar daquela ideia de
And now all sociologists have to be the one talking about the stability.
lógica, não é? Saber que tem um centro, saber que tem um sítio em que não se vai sair no dia seguinte. E isso não existe com o arrendamento.
And that doesn't exist with renting, because the next month it can go up and I might not be able to pay the rent,
Está bem. No seguinte não posso pagar a casa, fico sem casa.
which can mean that I can lose my house very quickly.
Como membro de uma cooperativa,
As a member of a cooperative,
solidariedade, ajuda mútua.
there's the solidarity and collaborative help.
Mas
So we
quando
create
não tem a possibilidade de qualquer
a fund.
situação,
So where we have a member that may not have may not be able,
créditos,
they will have the help of the fund.
e depois a partir do momento em que não têm que pagar o crédito,
And
continuam a pagar uma cota mensal.
when they cannot pay the credit, they will have that quota that they have to pay. And in any moment that they have that problem,
Uma rede, é criar uma comunidade e depois isto faz
so that means
não é só dentro
creating.
ajuda a criar a próxima cooperativa.
So this allows us to create a new
É algo à parte e mais uma vez não tem ligação partidária, isto funciona.
it has no linking to
Realmente
specifics, because this works in parallels with the public.
sistema próprio permite a pessoa ter essa segurança a longo prazo.
Looking for something that people identify. My question is that in Portugal, does that exist? Is the alternative without it being collaborative?
Sim, cada vez mais.
Do people feel a necessity to do this? That's what I've been seeing as an architect. Was seeing and looking at different people around me. I see people that wish to look for it and
Não sabem.
see these kinds of options,
Sim, se identificam. Sim, e principalmente,
especially since,
parte é a população mais envelhecida.
especially with older people who are worried about how they'll get older and how things will change, and they're getting scared.
Organizam-se e dizem, eu não quero.
So they organize themselves and they don't, if they don't want to go to the elderly home, and so they find a proactive way of living with a community.